I mean, I got a question. Are liberal parents perpetuating developmental issues among the youth? So you hear the youth always talking about like depression's up and the thoughts of wanting to end themselves is up, and they're just dealing with so much. And I think it's because in a lot of cases, more progressive parents tell them that they have a bunch of stuff to worry about. They got to worry
Yes.
about climate change. They got to worry about Donald Trump. They got to worry about, I don't know, the dog not eating, meat.
Oh,
And
yeah.
but it's like the dogs eat meat, guys, and so do humans. Surprising, shocker.
Ooh.
And so they're worried about all these different things that it causes this unnecessary anxiety among youth when really they just need to be kids. They just need to be kids. What do you think about it? Are liberal parents perpetuating developmental issues among the youth?
Yes. The youth are confused. That's why they have all these issues going on and all these self-deletion going on because they don't know what they're supposed to do or who they're supposed to be or how they're supposed to operate in this life. They're confused.
Absolutely. I mean, we name like every non-positive emotion a mental ailment. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you're confused, you're sad, you're angry. Oh, you have this condition. We got it. You have this condition. Let's drug you up. Like, this is what you have. You have ADHD. You got bipolar disorder. You're autistic a little bit. You're on the spectrum.
Right.
Like, they think anytime you're outside of the realm of happiness and you're not feeling happy in that moment, that it has to be some kind of mental illness because otherwise you're supposed to be happy all the time.
Yeah, it's like happiness. Like happiness is almost like a drug,
Yes.
And it's like no, happiness is an emotional state, and sometimes you can't always just be happy.
No, you're
And
human.
that's why, and the phones contribute to this as well because of the addiction to trying to get this hit of dopamine. And it's like I got to keep going back, and that's not helping as well because then when their level of dopamines aren't up and they're not like having that high essentially, then they feel like something is wrong, right? They feel low. And so yeah, I think it's a vicious cycle. So let's get to our quality sip. Parenting is the foundation for the future of humanity, and if it isn't successful now, our future is dark. So I mean, the foundation of the future is always the children, right?
Yep.
And if they're not being brought up properly, if they're not being brought up in a way that's going to lead to flourishing, then the future is going to be dark. It's not going to be light. And so let's get into this clip. I believe it's by The Hill, where they talk to this. I don't know exactly what his title is, but they talked to this guy who has done a study, and some shocking results came from this study.
How's your mental health these days? Well, that might
That's
depend
good.
on how
Thank you.
conservative your parents are. A new report from our next guest, Jonathan Rothwell, indicates that on a number of vectors, conservative parents perform better with their children than their liberal counterparts, leading to better mental health results for their kids. Rothwell writes, parental political ideology is a strong predictor of parenting style. Liberal parents had the lowest scores, meaning they were the least likely to endorse items indicating warm, disciplined parenting. Just 40% of liberal parents scored above average on the index, whereas 71% of very conservative parents and 56% of conservative parents did. As with parenting practices, political ideology and attitudes towards marriage are also strongly predictive of parent-child relationships. Very conservative parents, on average, enjoy the strongest relationships with their adolescent children, and liberals experience the worst. The difference is large and statistically significant at 95% confidence levels.
Ooh.
Conservative parents are 8 percentage points more likely to be in a good relationship with their adolescent child than liberal parents, and the gap is 14 percentage points between very conservative and liberal parents.
I mean, that's crazy right there.
Very
It's
telling.
so like people who are raising their kids to be, more conservative, they have stronger relationships, hey Sonic, with their children because they're more active and in tune with, what their children needs rather than how their child is feeling, right? Because when you're so focused on how are you feeling, you're not happy, let me make you happy, here's some Skittles. It's like, no, my mom's like, no, you don't need those Skittles, right? You
That's
had too
right.
much candy today. Or, just different things of that nature that aren't taking place on with more liberal parenting. It's more about, the feelings of the child and how they feel, what they want to be. And it's like, no, you're supposed to be molding this child into what they can become, right? But there's a pathway forward. You can't just, let them paint on a canvas, because children have no direction, right? They're blank canvases, but they need to be, shown like, hell no, this is like, this color goes with this color, and this is how you paint a straight line, and this is how, shapes and things of that nature, right? Which is not happening,
Yeah.
I think, in a lot of, liberal households. So,
Go ahead.
No, yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I hear all the time where I'll hear liberal parents say something like, yeah, we're letting our children lead us. Like,
Yes,
I hear
I
that
was
so
thinking
much.
that.
And I'm like, that's the complete opposite. That's how I know it came from Satan. Because that's the complete opposite of literally what the word teaches, which is to lead and guide your children so that, you can lead them towards him. And so I hear it all the time. And there's even so many examples of where these liberal parents are like taking away even more pieces of the foundation of who their children are and where they're supposed to go, from taking away their choice to even know what their sex is. Or I've even seen liberal parents not give their child a name until their child wants to give themselves a name. And it's like, when you start off with these things, you plant confusion and a path of longing and wandering for this child to be seeking some type of foundation for themselves for years to come, instead of starting off that way where you can already have a God is my foundation. This is who I am. This is who he made me to be. Everything else stems from that. Instead of having to start from the ground up, literally trying to pick up the pieces of your life in every way possible. I mean, no wonder these kids have anxiety and depression. They
Yeah.
don't know anything about themselves.
Yeah, they have too much to worry about. Like I
Yeah.
said, like that name thing is crazy. What do you mean?
Yeah.
You're untitled? Like you put untitled on your name card
Right.
in
I think the
kindergarten till you figure
United
it out?
Kingdom
Like-
allows that, I believe.
You said who?
I think the United Kingdom, the UK. I think they allow
That
that.
doesn't make
It's
any
someplace that
sense.
allows that. Yep.
So what are you supposed to call that child?
I know,
Child.
right?
That makes no sense. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's like they have no sense of who they are, and when you don't have a sense of who you are, then you can't be anything, because you don't have a starting point, right? So of course you can't nail your focus on any destination in sight. It's like all the destinations are in sight, and then you don't know which way to go.
Yep.
You're just roaming around aimlessly.
Yep.
You have anything, can you?
The discipline part was interesting. I mean, and it made sense. Of course, like a liberal parent would probably stay far away from disciplining their child because they want their child to do whatever they want, go with the wind. And it kind of makes me think of the gentle parenting
That's what I was thinking.
wave that, I don't know if that's still a thing, but I know that there was a wave of gentle parenting. And a lot of parents that did do it, they were like, yeah, that wasn't a good idea.
Oh God.
So it makes sense that conservative parents on the discipline front are better parents based on the statistics.
Absolutely.
Rothwell's research led him to conclude that adolescents with very conservative parents are 16 to 17 percentage points more likely to be in good or excellent mental health compared to their peers with very liberal parents.
Hold up.
So you're saying that conservative kids are in better health mentally than, kids that are being brought up in a liberal household. That's
Makes
what I
sense.
just heard.
Yeah.
Now, one of the issues is there's more currently at the moment, I believe there's more liberal, kids or liberal households because of, just the wave of everything. But now they're not really having kids. Now more conservatives are having kids. So
Well,
you'll
good end
probably
with
see,
them.
but that's how kind of the nature of, the United States has gone. It's like, oh, conservative, more conservative, and
Yep.
then everybody's like, no, we need to go more liberal, and then it's like liberal, and then it just, ebbs
Pendulum
and
always
flows like that.
swings.
Yeah, yeah.
Only 55% of adolescents of liberal parents reported good or excellent mental health compared to 77% of those with conservative or very conservative parents.
Here now to discuss his findings is principal economist with Gallup, Jonathan Rothwell. Welcome to Rising. Thanks for joining us. Let's start by breaking down why exactly this might be. You point out that conservative parents are more likely to adopt what has previously been referred to as an authoritative parenting style. First, what is an authoritative parenting style, and why do you think it is conservative parents and very conservative parents in particular that might be more likely to take on that style?
Well, the style is characterized by demandingness and warmth or responsiveness. Those are the two dimensions. Demandingness or lack of demandingness is one dimension. The other is warmth or coldness. And this style was developed in the psychology research literature by Diana Baumrind, Eleanor Maccoby, and other psychologists in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. It's been documented through hundreds of studies since that this style is highly predictive of depression, anxiety, and other forms of mental illness. And the optimal style is called authoritative by Baumrind, and that combines the expectations and high demands that a parent brings when he or she disciplines and enforces rules and regulations with the warmth and responsiveness that comes with child-centeredness.
I mean, that's okay. There we go. Okay. I mean, that's just it, because you don't want to have an authoritarian parent that is cold on you. That's like, hey, I demand this, and even if you don't live up to the expectations, they just want nothing to do with you. But then on the flip side, you don't want to have somebody who doesn't demand anything of you, that's more like your friend, but then it kind of just goes cold because maybe they're jealous of you. Maybe they wish they were younger, right? Which is
Seen that.
probably a symptom of what, if you don't establish that dynamic of, hey, I'm the parent and you're the child.
Yes.
My mom always told me, hey, yeah, we're cool and everything, but I'm your mom at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And you will respect me. And she gave me expectations of what I was to be. And I was, yes, there's pressure because you want to please your parents and you want to please the people you look up to make sure that you accomplish those or fulfill those expectations. But at the end of the day, if I fell short or if I wasn't on track, then I was always greeted with warmth. I was
Yes.
always like, hey, no, like, it's okay. I know, and I really want you to do this, but let's, figure out a pathway back. And that's not just parenting. That's any leadership style.
Yep.
Right? Because think about an effective boss, effective CEO. They have to do the same thing. If they don't demand things from their workers, then the company's not going to be successful. But if they demand things from their workers and then, their workers fall short and they just blow up at them, well, then now you don't have a good work environment. So people are going to be so on edge that they're not going to get anything done and your company is going to fall apart because the culture is not going to be there. When you establish this culture of great expectation, but also a good place to grow for growth, because I'm allowing you to be you and I'm here to help develop you even when you fall short, then, well, yeah, that is a good environment for kids especially, but for, just in general, like a business to be successful. And so,
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny that the style that works the best is very similar to how God treats his children. It's like, of course, authoritative, but also very warm, and there's grace and there's mercy, but also there's correction in a way where we can grow and learn and transform to be better people for his kingdom. So
Absolutely.
that's awesome.
I like that. I like that.
So, if I were to explore some kind of relationship between sunburns and human behavior, I could find in the data, if I conducted research, that it seems that everyone who ate ice cream one day ended up having a sunburn. And then I concluded that maybe eating ice cream causes sunburns. I would be overlooking the fact that people tend to eat ice cream when they're outside in the sun enjoying a warm day, and it's
This
actually
is
the sun
wild.
that causes
I see
sunburn.
where she's going.
What, if any, confounding variables did you look into in the research here that conservatives may be more likely to not report when they're experiencing mental health problems, that it's a part of the culture to either not recognize mental health problems as real or to sort of mask them to seem strong? What variables did you look into other than parenting style that could explain this correlation
Come on, land the plane.
with conservative parents and high reported mental
Land
health
it.
status?
Ooh, the word salad. Ooh,
All right.
the word salad.
Before she lands
Why did
it,
she give us such an example like that? That's
Because
extra.
What's that phrasing? Correlation
Does not equal
equal
causation.
causation.
No,
that's what she's getting
that's what
at.
she was hitting
and,
at. All
and
she
I'm
had to do
like,
is say correlation.
that's all she had to
How
say.
do you know that correlation doesn't equal causation in this case?
That's all she had to
Right.
say.
And she didn't even have to go to the example was actually, I like the example, but she didn't even need to put the example in there.
No.
But the issue is that in more conservative households, you build a mental toughness
Yes.
when you're able
Fortitude.
to strive for things and maybe you don't get it, or maybe you do get it, and then the next level is hard and you have to overcome these obstacles to get it. And there's a certain level of mental fortitude that you're awarded when you have to strive for things and overcome them. But when you're handed a participation trophy and told good job, do everything you do, well, you don't develop any thick skin. You don't develop, any grit. And so, yeah, when you're faced with a challenge in life, it's like, no, like everything's falling apart.
Crumbling.
Like my mental health is going to be the first thing to go. But on the flip side, no. Like if you've been raised in a more conservative household, it seems like, no, I just have the mental toughness to, push through this, right? Like I've been in this situation in maybe a different domain, but I know the process mentally of how to overcome and push through it and persevere.
Right. It's just what Pop said in Friday. You win some, you lose some, but you live to fight another day.
Yeah. As
Yep.
long as you still got breath, keep it going, keep chugging along.
Great question. So, quite a few is the short answer. We looked at education, household income, race, ethnicity, the sex of the parent, the sex of the child, the age of the child, subjective reports of how comfortable their standard of living is from the parent's perspective. We also looked at mental health measured by what the youth reports versus what the parent reports, and found that they were well aligned. And
Period. Name them out.
So yeah. So now it's like your question doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
Like
Next.
yeah, the correlation and the causation, don't even, word salad that you just said don't even matter, because we asked the parent and we asked the child, they're both consistent, right? And
so boom.
That's
yeah.
right.
So, yeah, boom.
What's your next question?
Yeah.
also say that we're not the first to identify the relationship between liberal adolescence and mental health problems. This has been something that the social psychologist Jonathan Haidt has written a lot about recently. And of course, many psychologists have documented the alarming rise in suicide, depression, and other mental health problems that we've seen over the last 10 years among adolescents in the United States.
It's also my understanding, Jonathan, that while conservatives might be less likely to seek treatment for things like mild depression or mild emotional disorders, they're actually more likely to seek treatment for severe depressive disorder or severe anxiety. Is that accurate?
I can't say that I've come across that literature, and we weren't really looking into that in a great deal of depth for this report, but I can tell you that in addition to the subjective items where the parent...
See, this is what's making me mad, because this is how media tries to enforce narratives.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when you have somebody who is esteemed like him and who studied and really cares about the work that he does, like if the data was completely the opposite, he would still have the same, presentation.
Yes.
Right? He'd still present it like, no, this is the data. This is the fact. This is what I found. But they, as the hostess, are trying to present and push this narrative like, well, what about this? What about that?
Yeah.
This is what I know. Instead of just asking him, well, what did you find? Right? Like, explain
go
what
in
you
more
find.
detail,
What
yeah.
does this data point mean? And that's being a journalist rather than a, media personality or whatever they call
Exactly.
themselves. Because this isn't real journalism.
No.
So
And that's why people don't trust these mainstream media sources anymore, because it isn't real journalism. That's why I got out of it, to be honest, because this was my major in school. But there is no following the ethnic code anymore. So
yeah.
is it called the ethnic code? I forgot.
Ethics?
Something like that. Moral code of ethics. That's what it
Parents
is.
are describing mental illness symptoms of their children, and the children are reporting their level of well-being. We also documented that those subjective measures are highly correlated with whether or not the child is currently receiving psychiatric medication and the probability that the child has recently visited a doctor to discuss psychological problems.
So I'm curious, were urban and rural areas also considered in the confounding variables list? I don't know if I remember you saying it. I can imagine a world where, we see a correlation currently in the data and voter trends of participation in Republican primaries and voting more conservative in rural areas, and also oftentimes an increase in actually mental health issues in conservative areas. A lot of these.
I can't listen to her no more.
I know.
This is just crazy. It's like, land the plane, let the man talk. Like, why is he on your show? Like, did y'all think y'all were gonna like
Are they the
challenge him?
That's
or-
exactly
It sounds
what
like
it
they're the
is.
counter argument. Usually how like Fox News or MSNBC has like the counter person. It's
Right.
like they're
Yeah.
the counter person for their own segment.
Yeah,
People
but
need to take a
but it
debate
doesn't make
class.
sense
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
like, are you trying to debate him? Because it sounded like you brought him on to talk about the data that you presented at the front of the show or at the front of the segment. And so, I mean, this is how media just, kind of steers clear of you. But this guy, we're going to let him answer one more and then we got to move on because she's taking too long.
Small towns across America have been left behind by a lot of industries for, this sort of urban sprawl. We've seen this trend to be in more urban areas. Likewise, we see a trend for urban areas to be more liberal, but I can definitely recognize that living in a, urban versus rural area could contribute to a child's mental health. Did you look into the rural-urban divide at all in the research or find any trends there?
We didn't have quite enough sample, I'd say, to look in great depth in rural versus urban, depending on how you define it. There didn't seem to be any large differences by educational attainment, socioeconomic status, though, surprisingly. So other work, notably by Ann Case and Angus Deaton, two Princeton economists, have found that deaths of despair have increased quite a bit among less educated white Americans who tend to live in rural areas. Lately, though, there's been some convergence, as they themselves have noted, and that other communities are starting to see rising deaths from alcohol use, drug use, accidental overdoses, and suicide,
Jeez.
even in many urban areas. So it seems like that may have first sort of spiked in rural areas, but is now very much an urban problem too. And that applies to adults who are middle-aged. These trends, what we're seeing are, in terms of mental health decline, are concentrated in adolescence, in terms of rising symptoms of depression and anxiety. And I think it's well established that is happening very much in urban areas as well.
Your study also looked.
Yeah, so we're gonna end it there. But yeah, it's basically like, hey, the urban areas, which are the more liberal areas. So that lady was right on that front. Yeah, they're seeing that rise in, depression and anxiety and thoughts of ending it all, and it's probably contributing, or it's probably a direct result of the parenting style, right?
Yes.
And so let's get into our quality set. Parenting is the foundation for the future of humanity. And if it isn't successful now, our future is dark. And so when it comes to, raising kids, or even if you have any impact on the youth at all, like I'm a coach right now, I don't have any kids, but I do work with the youth. You work with, the youth at our church. It's very important that you are, giving them expectations, but also treating them with warmth, right? And not just letting them be whatever and whoever, because they are the future. And if we aren't collectively, helping foster the youth to become the productive citizens of tomorrow, then our future will be dark.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, what do you think? Is conservative parenting styles, the authoritarian parenting style, is that better or is that worse? Yeah, bye, Sonic. Get out of here. All right, we'll be right back on the Quality Network with our last topic. Like with the algorithm.
Give